Uh, uh, Ovid. Anyway, Metamorphosis. Ovid's Metamorphosis. And this is a quote from that. So, and then Raleigh states here, Raleigh is a 16th century writer writing around this time of Shakespeare. He wrote, I think, one of the first histories of the world, blah, blah, blah. Okay. From thence our kind, that is not to say kind as in nice, but kind as like humankind, our kind hard-hearted is. So we're hard-hearted. Enduring pain and care, approving that our bodies of a stony nature are. Approving you could think of it as the sense of proving, not like I approve of you, but I am proving this to be true. So proving that our bodies of a stony nature are. So what this is saying, let's just read on to here, see what Thoreau's saying about it. So that's what this is saying. Let's see what Thoreau's saying. So much for a blind obedience to a blundering oracle. The oracle is referred to the oracle that told these two to throw them over their heads. Throwing the stones over their heads behind them and not seeing where they fell. Now this is a very interesting and intriguing line that honestly I haven't really fully gotten my head wrapped around, which is great. It's just one more area to look at. But what I personally think this is a blind obedience to a blundering oracle. Talking about why would these people just pick up stones and throw them over their head? Why would they want to do that? Why do we as humans want to have a relationship with stones? Our kind, hard-hearted is, enduring pain and care, approving that our bodies of a stony nature are. It's like our etymological roots, the ontological roots of where we come from, is of stone, based upon this mythology. And what is this mythology really getting to? It's like, why do we, in the face of just plowing our fields and not really going for what we want in our life, why do we keep doing this? Why do we keep getting up in the morning? How do we keep getting up in the morning, going to a job we don't feel in, and a life that we have no energy and passion for? Why are we still doing it? Okay, sorry about that. Had to handle something. So yeah, how are we able to do that? How are we able to live our lives like that? We must have some kind of a stony nature in us that can just withstand the density of such a life and be able to continue to keep going every day. I have this saying that I say, I think that everybody should just get a star for being a human and making it each day. It's just amazing that we can live one more day. I think that everyone deserves credit for that. So that's how I see this line. Let's get on to some more stuff. Because there's more stuff going on here. Okay. Oh, and also I want to note that the way he's saying this, laying up treasures where moth and rust, he's actually turning people on a dime. Because most people at this time, they go to church, they believe in Jesus, they believe in God and in the Bible and stuff. But most of the people are doing this very thing that he's talking about. So he's actually kind of making fun of nearly everybody that's a Christian in his time. And honestly, it probably still applies today. Most people, they say this and that, but do they really follow what's being said in the Bible? A lot of times, Thoreau is going to do that. He's going to throw stuff out there saying, you're not as good as you necessarily think you are, just so you know. But he does it so quietly that, most people probably won't even get that he's saying that. It's like, if you get that he's saying these things, you're probably not doing those things because you're that perceptive. But nonetheless, that's what's going on there. At least to me. Okay. This is also, there's a line in here that I want to read as well. Most men, even in this comparatively free country, through mere ignorance and mistake, are so occupied with the factitious cares and superfluously coarse labors of life that its finer fruits cannot be plucked by them. Their fingers, from excessive toil, are too clumsy and tremble too much for that. Actually, the laboring man has not leisure for a true integrity day by day. He cannot afford to sustain the manliest relations to men. His labor would be depreciated in the market. He has no time to be anything but a machine. How can he remember well his ignorance, which his growth requires? Who has so often to use his knowledge? We should feed and clothe him gratuitously sometimes, and recruit him with our cordials before we judge of him. The finest qualities of our nature, like the bloom on fruits, can be preserved only by the most delicate handling. Yet we do not treat ourselves nor one another thus tenderly. Okay, there's a lot going on here, and this is getting into what Walden is all about. So we've heard what the problems are that Walden wants to address. We're starting to see the area that Walden wants to take things and what Thoreau is trying to do in his experiment. I think that most of this is pretty explainable to people. People are spending so much time working that they can't spend time in the higher faculties and meditating, not necessarily meditating like a Buddhist, but meditating like thinking and contemplating about things. And just spending time in, understanding themselves or doing things that maybe even active things like I've always wanted to, fly planes, or I've always wanted to, have a garden, or I've always wanted to be a chef, or just things that you wanted to do that have called you, but it was like, oh, well, that's not really practical, or, whatever. I've got to tend the farm. I've got to do this or that. And it requires, they're finer fruits, and they require some delicacy, to be able to handle them, delicate handling. And this is an interesting line. How can he remember well his ignorance, which his growth requires? Who has so often to use his knowledge? What does this line mean? Let me tell you my interpretation. And I humbly think it's the right one. But what this means is, let's say you're a merchant, okay, and you sell spices in the market. You don't, and this is your business, you have a knowledge base. You have to know all the spices, all the going market rates for those spices, your competitors' prices, who your customers are, supply and demand. You got to know your bid and the ask, your whole wheel and deal selling. You've got to be out in the markets. You got to know your customers and their what they're asking for. You've got to watch your employees. You've got to run your business. This is the knowledge that he's talking about. People are so busy, and that works in any profession, as a farmer, a doctor, whatever. You are so busy with your knowledge base and what you need to do that you don't have time for your ignorance. Now think about this. You don't have time for your ignorance, which his growth requires. So if we want to grow, Thoreau is saying we need to be ignorant. We need to go into what we do not know if we want to grow. And this is a really key point. Where do we go when it's like, so if we're so busy with our life, we don't have time to spend time doing nothing. Or spend time asking questions, how is fire created? What makes cells in the body move? Why am I unhappy right now? Or whatever, We don't have time for our ignorance in asking, what is my meaning of my life now? We don't have time to answer these things we don't have answers to. But that's where our growth lies. By going into the areas that we have questions about, that we are unsure of, the unknown. By going into the unknown, that's where we grow. We don't grow by going into what we know. Now, there's a practicalness, of course, to do what we know so we can survive. Thoreau is a very extreme individual, and I think that his extreme life is more about making a point about life more than it is about replicating his life. So many people say it's like, oh, Thoreau was just a dude, he lived out in the woods. He's so crazy, no one's going to do that. If everybody did that, we would be, Zimbabwe. America would never be what it is today, and you'd have a terrible life. It's like, okay, man, yeah, chill out, all right? It's cool. It's all right. I think that Thoreau's point the statement that his life is and that Walden is, he's making it so extreme that we can actually start to really see the intricacies and the delicacies and the inner workings and the mechanics of what it means to really live a life that's yours, your life, not your boss's life, not your country's life, your life. And so that's really what this is. A huge paragraph as well. Frankly, just about every paragraph is huge, but that's going there. So let's continue going on here, and notice the fruit. This is again a biblical reference. The apple, the fruit. But in this sense, I think that it's more idyllic. There's more of a utopian kind of it's like the fruits of life, and there is a biblical sense towards that. But it requires delicate handling and preservation. So this is a very delicate thing. And look at how he ends this. Yet we do not treat ourselves nor one another thus tenderly. Okay, now this is a huge statement that gets into philanthropy. We're already do you hear the biblical tone here? One of Jesus's statements was, love your neighbor as yourself. Well, look at this. Yet we do not treat ourselves nor one another thus tenderly. And Thoreau has a kind of different definition of tenderly, I think, especially with other people, because he can be known to be pretty darn crass with people, as we've already seen. He's making fun of them all the time. But he's making fun of their stupidity, and he's trying to get them to become more cultivated, kind of wake them up a bit. It's like, hey, wake up, dummy. Stop doing what you're doing. Try doing something else. So do we treat ourselves delicately and tenderly, and do we try to preserve the fruits and that we have? And how about, do we do that for other people? Are we supporting other people in their life, or are we trying to manipulate them, to control them, to get them to do what we want so we can profit and they can walk away poor, or the shorter end of the stick? How are we living our life? This is a huge statement, especially for Christians. It's also just a big statement politically, socially. Okay. So there you go. And really, this is amazing because, he takes it out to one another. So it's like, this isn't just an experiment for each individual. This extends out to our society. And I think Thoreau, and I can prove this to you in Civil Disobedience, I think Thoreau really does see that I think he would actually challenge somebody that said, hey man, if we all did what you do, we'd all live a poor, crazy life. We'd never have the America that we have today. I think that he would actually challenge that. And he would say, no, I think that we'd have an even more prosperous country than we do now if we did these things. Because if you look at the successful times in our lives and in our country's history, it's always been with these individuals that were kind of eccentric, a little bit outside of the box, doing things that were, part of their dream or something they really strive for, and that were definitely, something they spent a lot of time on, and that was coming out of a sense of themselves. And there were great fruits with those, and there was delicate handling. I'm thinking of Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, presidents, Abraham Lincoln, JFK, even the revolution, the American Revolution. There's just a lot, and you can take even Google, Google, IBM, YouTube. These are all things that I personally think there's an argument that they can be said to be fit into this kind of this setup. But that's really neither here nor there. The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. What is called resignation is confirmed desperation. From the desperate city you go into the desperate country, and you have to console yourself with the bravery of minks and muskrats. That is, not so brave. Even the words sound kind of, weak and wussy. Mink and muskrat.